We are back. Sports, talking sports from Nedick's at the Garden, vintage sports. I'm a little off my kilter. My co-hosts today are Hal Bock and Alan Blumkin. I'll tell you why I'm off my kilter. Alan just told me off the air of the passing of Kenny Sears, one of my New York Knicks heroes growing up, and a Santa Clara. I'm out in the West Coast, Santa Clara graduate, and I am really shocked. He was the forward. They didn't call him strong forward, shooting forwards at that time, and he certainly wasn't a power forward. What'd they call him, Al? The pencil?
The pencil.
Yeah. You covered, you were back in those days too, Hal Bock. Do you have any memories of Kenny Sears?
Sure, I remember that team. I mean, those Knicks teams, I mean, it's kind of embarrassing what we're going through now with the Knicks of today, because the legacy of this team, they had some great ball players and great teams back in the 50s and 60s, early 60s, which would have been his time. I remember him, a blonde guy, and
right.
Quite a good shot maker. They had good teams and good players, and they've fallen on hard times.
They just lacked a center for so many years.
Yes, they did. And then they got Willis Reed.
Harry Gallatin, I think Harry Gallatin was the last, or Sweetwater Clifton. Those guys.
Sweetwater Clifton was there.
This was Ray Felix.
Oh my God!
Ray Felix from LIU. That's right.
Yeah, we used to have.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't remember that.
We hit the floor.
I didn't remember that Ray Felix was from LIU.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
I think he went out to the Lakers and gave him some good years. Or
we used to count how many times he would hit the floor during a game.
He was not
he was also very
guy.
Skinny.
But he couldn't.
Yes, very skinny. And we've talked, I guess, the theme of this show can very easily be, we can make 80 shows out of the incompetence in the Knicks drafting, and not just that, the bad luck. One guy, I can't think of his name, before Stith, and who was terrific at St. Bonnie's, and the first Stith, Tom Stith, they drafted him, he gets tuberculosis. But before that, and Alan will come up with it.
They took a guy from the Globetrotters named Willie Gardner, and he came down with heart trouble.
That's the guy I'm thinking of, exactly. Willie Gardner.
Then they traded Gallatin and Clifton to the Pistons for Mel Hutchins and the number one draft choice. So that Mel Hutchins blew his knee out about 2 games into the season and had to retire. And the draft choice, they turned it to Charlie Tyree.
Okay.
It always comes back to Charlie Tyree, huh?
Yeah.
It does. He just wasn't good. You know who gave him a year of decency was the late Phil Jordan. Do you remember that?
I remember him, yeah.
I don't remember him.
Remember? Yeah, he wasn't given everyone else that preceded him up until that time. He wasn't as bad as some of the others. Let's put it that way.
I think a whitewater rafting accident.
It would have been better if it was Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Well, yes. Which is kind of funny. It leads me to tell you the quick story of Marty Rose, ex-AP guy, who you know. We were talking on the other day, and the Mets have an open draft, an open spot on their roster. They made a move, and he tells me there's an open roster spot. I said, why don't you just fill it with Bryce Harper?
Right.
He goes, right. Well, it'll be easy to do that. We could dream.
To refer to Charlie Tyree as Dumbo because of his protruding
ears. Yes.
What do you guys think about Derek Jeter becoming an owner of the Marlins? Did you hear that?
Yeah, I saw that.
Derek Jeter and Jeb
Bush. I think he's in with Jed Bush. So,
Jeb Bush.
Jeb Bush,
I've never been too high on ownership in general, on any way, shape, or form. Just given and especially now given the class distinction. But it's interesting that a player, and it's not just him with enormous wealth, it's a guy like Magic Johnson and
Michael Jordan
and others who can market themselves so well and accumulate so much wealth both on and off the court or on off the field that it says a lot that there are athletes. I come to mind, you're a Syracuse guy, Hal. Dave Bing comes to mind, an athlete.
Well, Bing is an enormously successful industrialist in Detroit. After his playing career, he could have been the mayor of Detroit. I mean, he has made a lot of money and has been tremendously successful. And he also recruited Derek Coleman out of Detroit to come and play for Syracuse. And Derek was one of their best players for a couple of years. So
yes, he was.
I think he became mayor there.
Did he become mayor? He could have.
Yeah.
If he didn't, he should have.
Yeah, he did.
He was tremendously successful.
There were
company.
two Johnny Egans that played back in the day, one for Providence and one for St. Joe's. And one of them did become mayor. I don't know which one it is. I tend to think it must be Providence, but I don't even know why I do.
Caught up in the 1961 scandals.
Oh, okay. That was one of the Jack Egans.
Yeah.
And
Johnny Egan, who played on the Loyola team that won the championship in 1960.
Right, and didn't Johnny Egan play for the Knicks for a little bit?
Yeah, he was sent to the Bullets when they got Bellamy.
I thought that was Comas.
No,
that's a different one. That's the Busher.
The Busher.
You're
right.
I can't doubt you. I'll never even.
They sent.
You're right.
And Jim Barnes was sent to the Bullets for them. I think maybe there was another player in there, but I have to look that up at the Knicks.
Yeah. Well,
but Jim Barnes was the first place. The year he came out, they drafted Reed in the second round that year.
Right. I'm going to ask you guys another thing. Do you remember Bud Palmer at all with the Knicks?
Sure. As an announcer. He was prehistoric.
He played for the Knicks, though.
He played with the Knicks, too. Am I correct?
He came out of Princeton and played for the Knicks.
Yeah, he was
that was the first
TV
game I ever saw on TV.
Yeah.
It was against the Boston Celtics, and my dad's nickname, because of his full name, Kusile, was Kuski. And I'm a little kid, and Bob Cousy is dribbling up and down the court, and a whole bunch of confusions with names. But I remember Bud Palmer coming off the bench, and I guess I remember that because he did later become an announcer. He went to Princeton. Whoa. Late reaction.
Yeah, and one more thing before we start for real. Somebody the other day on the vintage NBA site put up a team picture of the 1950-51 Rochester Royals. The Rochester Royals are now in their fourth iteration as the Sacramento Kings.
Right.
And
via Kansas City and Cincinnati.
Via Cincinnati, Royals, Kansas City Kings, and Sacramento. This team is the only one in that whole franchise's history to ever make it to a final, let alone win one. They did it in the third year of their existence in the NBA, and they've been in the league. This is their 68th season in the NBA.
Well, the most important thing the Rochester Royals ever did was send Red Holzman to the Knicks, right?
Holzman
played for the Royals.
Holzman was the third guard on that team, behind Bob Davies and Bobby Wanzer. But,
right, that's right.
You talk about futility, long-term futility. This franchise is up there.
Right, gentlemen. I don't know if we noted the passing of oh my God, I'm blanking. The passing of my mind. The forward on the Knicks that had a heart attack, Dave Stallworth.
Yeah, we
that
a couple of weeks ago.
We did talk about
it. We talked about Dave Stallworth, yeah.
You did an entire book about. You did a book on Dave Stallworth, Hal?
No, who? Me?
I thought you said you did a book on
No. I said he came out of Wichita State.
Oh, okay.
So,
well,
I saw him play, but I never wrote a book about him.
Oh, okay. I thought for a second. And any memories of him from either of you guys that we didn't talk about last week that you'd like to get out there?
I enjoyed watching him play.
He was
had that heart condition that sidelined him for a year or so. Yeah. And then he came back and was an integral part of that team.
Right.
Of the Knicks team.
Right.
He went to the Bulls.
Not many athletes come back from heart problems. John Hiller did.
No.
He went to the Bullets with Mike Ridden for Earl Monroe.
Oh,
pretty good trade.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and how we never thought that there were enough basketballs to go around between Fraser and Monroe, and how
they worked it out, didn't they?
Oh yes, so beautifully. Let's end this part of it by just saying rest in peace to New York Knicks forwards, who no one has anything bad to say about those two guys. They're just icons, really, in Knick history, and will be sorely missed. The three of us plan to talk a little Al Davis this evening, and I think it's a good time because the Oakland Raider franchise has just been approved to move from Oakland yet again, at this time to Las Vegas, which is, strange bedfellows for a league that doesn't want gambling, that is afraid of the effects of gambling. But that's for later. Al Davis this isn't the first time this team has jilted Oakland on one level or another, and I'm certainly not blaming the Oakland Raiders entirely in this case. City government, and Oakland is basically right across the bridge from where I live in Alameda, in the East Bay of Northern California, and city government has not been good to any of the franchises, particularly good to any of the franchises, especially the Raiders, and especially the A's, and especially the Warriors. Now, they needed to come up big on two of the three franchises. They weren't expected to keep all three. It's down now to just having the A's in Oakland, which, if you're a fanatical baseball fan like I am, you're cool with that. But it seems to me that better heads could have prevailed along the way. The Oakland or Golden State team based in Oakland now is going back to San Francisco, where they came from when they moved from Philadelphia, and there's nothing. They can't match it. Oakland can't match it, and now the Raiders are gone. Now Al Davis needed no permission from the league when he moved them to L.A. the first time. And it's this time he got the permission with almost a unanimous vote. And so it's really weird being up here in this sports community with the effects of it all. I will start.
Oakland has always been kind of a little brother to San Francisco. In the perception, I think, of people around this country.
Right.
There's no there, right? That's what was written about Oakland once. And
yes.
So, I've been in Oakland, and it always impressed me as being a kind of a city that was down on its luck, back on its heels a little bit. Now, the fact that they had 3 major league franchises is pretty impressive. Well, now they have one. And,
right.
If you're a city, the city fathers have to step up and make sure, do whatever they have to do to maintain those franchises in your city. So I blame the city management for the loss of these 2 teams. And there's always talk about the A's moving as well. And that's a sad
that
thing
will
for
not
the residents
happen.
of that
very
town.
close to completing a deal for a ballpark. The A's will definitely stay, but I think it's a pity to use a fan base like a yo-yo. One way or the other, city management stepping up. They moved once, came back from L.A., jilted another team. I can't think of the city, Hawthorne or some city that paid the Raiders an outrageous amount. I think it was what sounds like a little amount now. It was $1 million to run a study to see if they should build the ballpark, build the stadium there. And
that was in Southern California, right?
And Al said, took the money and left. He was never going to move his team to Hawthorne, California. But and then they came up here and took a really beautiful park, the Oakland Coliseum, and made it a football stadium by putting up a wall that took away the entire ambience and the view of the North Bay, of Berkeley and what have you. So the city was screwed. They made the mistake of appeasing Al Davis with the wall, thereby making the A's the stepchild. And in the meantime, you're right. It's the city government that needed to step up. All cities don't recognize what a ballpark can do to the surrounding a team, a ballpark, a franchise, to the surrounding area of the city. I think the Giants is an example. You wouldn't believe how refurbished the south of Market Street area is. They call it SoMo in downtown San Francisco. It's a godsend, and teams, and it's historic. I mean, the New York City, speaking of not respecting the franchise, and a city that should have stepped up with Robert Moses and Wagner to save the Giants and Dodgers from moving. It's along the same lines.
And the irony of that is that the area that they wanted to build, that O'Malley wanted to build his ballpark in, was downtown Brooklyn, and there's now a Barclays Center, which is home for the Nets and, for the moment, the Islanders. But that's the same place that O'Malley wanted to build a ballpark, and they said, no, you can't. And so as a result, California got the two New York franchises.
Well, the Giants were going to move to Minneapolis if O'Malley hadn't convinced them to move out west with him. Because the Polo Grounds was outmoded. It was totally outmoded at that point. And, the Giants, as I suspected, they were a bad team in '57, and I suspected that when they brought all those rookies like Cepeda and Felipe Alou up in 1958, that they held them down on purpose one year, just to make sure that the team the Giant team was lousy in '57, and they were going to move anyway.
Well, it made perfect sense for O'Malley to lure Stoneham to go to California with him, because then he would get the approval of the National League. You had two teams, and from schedule standpoint, it made it a lot easier and a lot simpler.
Well, until the A's moved out to Oakland, the Angels the only team in the West Coast in the American League.
Right, that's true.
That's absolutely, and that made it very difficult. And I think that's one of the reasons Charlie Finley saw gold, if you will, he thought by establishing a rivalry, and there is a little bit of a rivalry between the two teams. And the A's have had had some tremendous teams out here. They've that last dynasty that they had, or the one in the 70s, 5 years in a row winning the division, 3 years in a row world champions, some terrific teams. So, and Oakland is perceived as the weak sister, but the East Bay includes a bunch of counties like Contra Costa County and Alameda County, and there's some money out in the East Bay. There's an awful lot of money. And again, Al's son took over, and the deal is all but set. I don't see anything messing it up at this point. It's going to be very interesting when a team moves to see how their fan base reacts and how many people come out to see him and what their support is and what the protests are. I can still see in my mind's eye when the Giants moved on that last day. There was a sign up in the bleachers right by the clubhouse, and they had pictures of these guys walking up to clubhouse for the final time, and the sign said, "Stay, team, stay." And that, as a 10-year-old kid, that really stood out. Al, you didn't have this problem because you were a Yankee fan, and I want to ask Hal Bock, as a Giant fan, who did you follow in 1958?
I followed my wife around the campus of New York University. I was very, very engaged to a beautiful woman, and I made sure that I kept my eye on her. I lost interest. I honestly lost interest in baseball. There was no way I was going to root for the Yankees. I mean, it just wasn't going to happen. And they had taken away my team, and they took away the Dodgers with them. And I was very, very angry with baseball. And so I paid scant attention to what was going on in baseball in those couple of years between 1957 and 1962. I mean, I watched the World Series. I watched Bill Mazeroski hit the home run and stuff like that. But on a day-to-day basis, I was not engaged in baseball. I was more engaged in graduating from NYU and getting married to the most beautiful girl in the world.
Nice story. Nice story. Another thing comes to mind that I forgot to ask you when you mentioned that your son played hockey. You told the story of the mask and what have you. You worked for the Rangers in the old Madison Square Garden.
Yes,
did you guys skate up on the top floor? There was
Iceland, absolutely.
So did I.
That's where they practiced.
The Rangers practiced, but they opened it up to the public on most times. You go up there, you pay a little admission fee, and
it was a public rink without question. And I remember
it was the best kept secret in New York.
we had a defenseman. We were trying to sell this team. I'm working in public relations. We're trying to sell this team as this great asset that New York has. And we had a defenseman. Defenseman's name was Irv Spencer. Called him Spinner.
I remember the name.
Irv Spencer. And he was a good defenseman. He just had one shortcoming. He had trouble skating backwards. Now, if you're a defenseman, it's probably important to be able to skate backwards. And I can remember like it was yesterday. They had netting at the end of the rink to protect from pucks being flying out of the rink. And he was skating backwards, and he got tangled up in the webbing, and he was caught in this net, and he was almost like upside down during practice. And we were trying to explain away this dilemma that he had to the writers who were watching practice. So, I remember that rink very well. And yes, my son did skate there, and so did my wife.
I thought about that for like 2 or 3 weeks. Why don't I remember to ask him when he's on the air? Very interesting that we should. It was laid out like with the lines drawn. As if and it
belonged to the Garden. The Madison Square Garden owned that property, and why wouldn't you use it for a practice rink?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I'm sure they built the rink after, so they could have the practice.
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
Yeah, but why wouldn't you open it to the public? And we'd go there and skate. I'd skate up and down as if I were a right winger. Imagining, going through the motions as if I had a stick, and it's just great fantasy, great memories. Let's do a little memories of the significance of Al Davis. He was the commissioner. A lot of people forget that he was the commissioner of the AFL when they merged. And,
he forced the merger. The fact that they named him the commissioner frightened the daylights out of the NFL because they knew that he would do anything. He's liable to do anything. So that step, I think, forced the merger of the two leagues. Forced the NFL to say,
the Giants opened up the floodgates when they signed the kicker Pete Gogolak away from Buffalo.
Yes, the kicker. Yes,
the first time that the player of any significance switched leagues like that. So he went up when Davis became commissioner. By the time they agreed to the merger, he had signed a whole bunch of NFL stars for the AFL for future delivery.
Sure. Well, and the NFL knew that he would do anything. When they announced
the merger, everything reverted back.
Exactly.
Well,
the Raiders were the last of the 8 teams in the original AFL to come into existence. They were threadbare, and they were a basket case when Davis, who I think worked for Sid Gilman and with the Chargers at that point, took over the team, and they turned them into very quickly into an AFL powerhouse.
Silver and black,
he was a great coach early on. I read somewhere that he was a coach at Army, and he got the job because the Army people confused him with another guy named Al Davis.
That's great. I never heard that one.
I mean,
that's what. And I remember reading this somewhere. It was either in one of two places. There's a book that was written in the 70s or 80s called Slick about Al Davis. I can't off the top of my head, and I'll go to the computer later, come up with the author of that book.
Well, I know. I will tell you that there's a book written by a good friend of mine named Phil Pepe, wrote a book named Slick about Whitey Ford, because that was Ford's nickname.
I have that.
But this was a football book written about Al Davis called Slick as well. Incredible. Phil Pepe, a good friend of mine. I can't tell you how many hours I spent reading people like you, Hal Bock, Peter Golenbach, who Alan and I have the fortune to talk to, David Nedick, who we talk to on this network. This is like my library, and my memories come alive. You mentioned Phil Pepe. Again, you grew up in New York. This guy, Daily News. What do you say? How did I ever ask you about Dick Young? If you had impressions, memory of him, any sort of an acquaintanceship?
Like you did, I grew up in New York. I grew up reading I read newspapers. I was a newspaper junkie, and I read the sports sections first. I opened the paper back to front.
Backwards,
and,
right?
I read the Daily News every day, and Dick Young was in the Daily News. And he was a trailblazer, because before Dick Young came along, baseball writers sat in the press box and they observed the game and they wrote what they saw, and that was the end of it. Dick Young took it to the next step by going into the clubhouse and asking players to explain what they had done, and that was a giant step for baseball writing and sports journalism, because he was giving the players a voice, and it was a very important change that happened late 40s, early 50s, I guess, and he was considered the most important baseball writer, maybe in the country, certainly in New York. And his Clubhouse report, Clubhouse Confidential, was must reading for any baseball fan in that era. And I was privileged to know him and to work alongside him. He was much older, obviously, and it was a real honor to be in the same press box with him. I felt honored to be there with this guy, because he had been one of my idols growing up. I'll tell you a story about Phil Pepe. Phil Pepe was maybe 5 years older than I am, and he had been hired to be the schoolboy sports editor of the World Telegram and Sun, and he needed an assistant, and I was recommended to him. And they asked me, people at NYU asked me, would you be interested? And I said, would I be interested? I'm a freshman journalism student at NYU. Yeah, I would be interested. So they sent me down to the World Telegram and Sun. It was located on Barclay Street, Lower Manhattan. And at that time I was in the ROTC, so I marched in there in my Air Force ROTC uniform, looking kind of foolish. But I walked in and I interviewed with Phil Pepe, and he hired me. And so for 4 years I worked as his assistant. And I would come into the World Telegram and Sun about 5 o'clock in the evening, and I would take results. Coaches would call in, managers would call in with schoolboy sports results, and I would write about 3 or 4 paragraphs that would be in the paper the next day. Well, let me tell you, Ralph and Alan, I was in seventh heaven, because I was, 18, 19 years old, and here I was in a metropolitan daily, a major metropolitan daily newspaper. My story was in that paper every day. And you couldn't, there's no price you could put on that for a kid that age.
Was your name?
No byline, but it was my copy. And it was,
and you knew it.
It was just the greatest time.
Yeah. Nice.
It was thrilling,
Good feeling. Wow. I mean, you lived a dream life because you never really went to work, the way I see it.
I had some moments. Don't kid yourself. But no, you're right. I had no complaints. I've often said that. I've made presentations about my books, and I've told people that I lived my own dream. I mean, this is what I wanted to do when I was 7 years old. And my father, rest his soul, said to me, "That's the press box, and that's where the writers sit." And I said, "What do you mean the writers?" I said, "The writers, they come here every day. They write about the game." I said, "That's their job?" He said, "Yes." I said, "That's the job I want." I'm 7 years old, you know. So to be able at age 7 to lay out your life's plan and then live
and
it
actualize
is pretty darn good.
But it's good to have a life's plan, but it's also better when you can look back and say, I actualized it. Because
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I have no complaints. I have no complaints because I achieved everything that I wanted to do, and so I have, I'm very happy with my life's the way my life has worked out.
How's the book
going?
going?
A few months ago, maybe 3 months ago, I asked you this question, and I want to see if the answer's changed. What's the next project?
The next project is put my feet up and relax because my wife doesn't want me doing any more books. It takes too much time away from her. So I'm not doing I have no books on my agenda.
All right. Well, keep doing that. I'm glad you do this. You keep your hand in a little bit.
Yeah, and that's very important to me, really. And I'm doing a blog, a column for a website that I do once a week. And it just keeps me busy and allows me to, maintain some involvement. And I enjoy that. I enjoy writing. So that's been good for me. And this is good for me. That's why I'm here every Wednesday night.
I don't even know your exact age. You happen to be an excellent voice. And you still have, as we all do, I'm the weak link on this station. A lot of us are a little older, but we haven't lost it in terms. Alan's a great example. You ask him a question, boom, your mind is that quick, Alan. I'll ask you both. What do you contribute? Do you do puzzles? I know Alan reads a lot.
I used to do crossword puzzles constantly. I've backed off over the last few years, but I always do exercises, memory exercises. When a couple of years ago, I memorized the entire 1952 top set, 407 cards. Who was on, and so there's some guys that are pretty damn obscure. So I've always had basically a photographic memory since I can remember. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But I always keep. I do also a lot of things to keep my, keep it going. You have to.
How is there? Some people do. Some people it's just natural. You got it, just like Al has it. What do you contribute? What do you attest to contributing to this? Great question.
I read sports sections every day. I read sports sections every day, and so I keep up that way. I read books all the time, and I take my wife out to lunch a lot. So I have a full life, and I'm very happy with my life.
Hal, do you read the stories on the Knicks and the Jets?
Absolutely, sure.
Oh God, those two organizations.
I read everything. I'm a sports fan. Baseball first. Baseball will always be first.
Yeah.
For me, but I'm a sports fan, so I follow hockey. I follow basketball. I follow football. The draft is coming up this week. And so that's going to be interesting. So there's always something. There's always something on there.
Hal?
I'm sorry. Say again.
Were you with the Rangers in '64 when they got Jacques Pont?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, I was. I was
Okay.
In fact,
do you remember
I'll tell you
a penalty killer named Val Fontaine?
Of course, sure.
All right. Well, I gave Val Fontaine, one of those days I was up there skating. He happened to be up there and around. I gave him what they called a blue book, the Ranger Blue Book. It was a little.
I was the co-editor of that book. That was the yearbook.
Well, I got Val Fontaine. I'm going to look in it right now because I got Val. Is one of the few things I saved over a lifetime. Val Fontaine had every Ranger playing, Hatfield and Gilbert and everybody playing signed that book for me. Next time I went back and saw him, he gave me the book. He was one of the sweetest, nicest guys to have done that. But he says, sure. It's just like, can you get a baseball player today? Here, Reggie so-and-so, I'm going to give you this book. Get everybody in your clubhouse to sign it for me if you would. You know, I asked him in a nice way, but
hockey
could you
players
imagine today?
Down to earth more than other team athletes in this country, right?
Oh, absolutely. I would go as a kid for autographs, and I'd go to the hotels, the Biltmore and the Roosevelt, and wherever out-of-town athletes would, basketball, hockey, baseball too. They stayed downtown in these hotels, and I'd go for autographs. Nicest guys, Gordie Howe sitting in the lobby, asking me how I'm doing in school. You don't want to know, Gordie. You don't want to know. but
I always found that hockey players were the best, the nicest interviews, the nicest. They were very kind to and interactions with reporters, and there was nobody ever said to me, "Get out of my face," in a hockey dressing room. They did that in baseball dressing rooms, though. So. Hockey players, they're small town, or they were small town Canadian guys who suddenly found themselves in the spotlight. And they were terrific. The Ranger players on the team that I worked with the Rangers, they were wonderful guys. I remember Rod Gilbert.
You have memories of John Halligan, who was with the Rangers, and Jerry Ahorns, Herb Elk, who helped publish that.
Herb Elk. In fact, the very story, I went out to a Met game with Herb Elk, and I used to buy all video guides from him, and then it was an afternoon game, and he died on the bus to Philadelphia. He was working for the Astros. He died on the way down to Philly on the bus from a heart attack.
Wow.
This is the day after I saw him. My friend Harvey Porras and I saw him. We went to a game of Shea with him. That was terrible.
Life can be fleeting.
Yeah.
Don't you know?
Yeah, in fact,
gentlemen,
you mentioned school.
We're at the end of it.
Ralph,
yes.
I just want to say one thing. You mentioned school. Some writer once asked Yogi how he liked school, and he said closed.
Yogi is one of those who will be missed by every baseball fan every day. You can't help. On some level, you think of Yogi, you think of Jackie Robinson every day. You think of Willie Mays every day. Just not a day goes by.
In fact, somebody put up a picture of Yogi and with his quote that says he liked Little League ball was good because it kept the parents off the streets.
Right.
So I put down, I still miss him.
Right.
But the
blind salesman is
American
here.
philosopher of the 20th century.
Yogi, the blind salesman, is here. Tell him I gave at the office. All right, guys. Same time, same bad channel. You say it, Hal.
Same bad time, same
Hal.
channel. Yeah.
All right. It's hearing you say it is one of the highlights of my week. You guys are terrific. We'll see you next week. And those of you out there, keep on keeping on. We got the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Ralph Tyko. The hosts are Hal Bock and Al Blumkin. Thank you, everybody. See you guys. Thank you again.